So SAP sold about 10% more licenses in for S/4HANA, their main product. And this is, so we have chosen the right topic and the right webinar title. So the path to S/4HANA, 278 pages for success. How to make use of the simplification list, etc., to quickly identify and solve migration problems. I'm not alone, and I proudly present, and it's my pleasure to have with me my colleague Fabian. Hello, Fabian.
Hello, Stefan. Thank you.
Okay, so just before we start, some organizational information. This webinar will be recorded, and you will be informed next days with an email where you find the link to download or to see this recorded session, and especially to download the slides. And if you have questions regarding the webinar, so please use the functionality of our webinar software, GoToWebinar. There's a question box, and type in your questions, and we will answer at the end of the session your questions. Okay, yes, Fabian. Oh, yes, so we prepared a poll. So please just, you will see a poll, and we would like to know, what about your status with S/4HANA? Which project phases did you already complete? So please click where you are in an evaluation phase, project planning phase, or maybe in an implementation phase, or maybe you did a successful go live in the past. So
yeah, we have a lot of answers incoming
yes.
here, and I think there's a clear trend towards
yes.
one of the solutions.
Yes, so just wait, we will present the results.
Okay, so thank you very much for your votes.
So still waiting for the results. Just a second, please. Okay.
No?
No.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay, I think there's a clear trend. 2/3 about are still in the evaluation phase, and 8% did have a successful go live in the past. And there's something in the middle, project planning and implementation phase. Okay, Fabian, regarding what is S/4HANA in a few words?
Yeah, okay, Stefan. So I think you won't be surprised that I have some slides prepared for today.
Really?
So yeah, we will be talking about different topics. I think the main interesting ones are the ones from probably chapter 4. But still, since you asked S/4HANA, what is it? Of course, just to be on the same level here, it is an own product number, so it's not SAP ERP, it is S/4HANA, so it's a different product. The full name is also with Enterprise Management. It kind of replaces ERP. I mean, it's a different product, but still we don't know if SAP ERP will be continued forever. And of course, it only runs on the HANA database. And yeah, from the history, it clearly developed out of SAP ERP. And there was the HANA database called Suite on HANA, and we've had the first major simplifications, which was Simple Finance. Now it's called S/4HANA Finance. And then we had the same for logistics, and we also have many more simplification items, and we will talk about this later, which make a difference between SAP ERP and the S/4HANA.
Okay.
And of course, there are also some new features, so it's not just simplification from a technical point of view, but still the product evolved from SAP ERP. So when you talk about the release, it's just a little different naming than in the past. So there is no more enhancement package or something like that. It's called Feature Package Stack, and currently we are on Feature Package Stack 2. and the release is still S/4HANA 15.11. The next one will be 16.10, I think. Okay. Yeah, and yeah, this is where we currently are here. Yeah, then.
Yes. What is the differences for all these end users now? What are the benefits, maybe?
Yeah, so since the title already says it, the end user will feel a great difference from the user interface. So the user interface will be Fiori for S/4HANA. As far as I know, the Cloud Edition only has Fiori Launchpad as user interface. The on-premise edition also has the sub GUI, but still it's recommended to use the Fiori Launchpad. And there are currently nearly 300 Fiori apps available. And if, yeah, the slide also shows it, there are different types of Fiori apps. The transactional ones have been there for a while, and you could also use them without HANA or without S/4HANA. But the analytical apps and fact sheets, and also the enterprise search and so on, this is clearly S/4HANA features, and you can use them only when you have a HANA database below. So the end user will definitely feel the difference between.
What does it mean for the customers?
Yeah, for the customers, I have this title. It's basically copied from Apple, right? So they tell the same thing when a new iPhone comes out. So basically, a lot of things change, but a lot of these changes are kind of marketing related. So when you look at the videos on the S/4HANA website, you can see always the same 3 screens where you have nice graphics, and yeah, it's called Boardroom of the Future. So this is what SAP wants to think you that this is S/4HANA, but as far as I know, this is actually business objects on top of S/4HANA, but still for marketing, everything changes, right?
Yes, it looks great.
Yeah, yeah, it definitely looks great. But yeah, when we look into the changes that are actually there from a technical perspective, this is probably something most of you will already know, S/4HANA Finance, formerly known as Simple Finance. So the data structure changed a lot. So you have less tables, less redundant data, and it basically makes the access much faster, and it makes use of the in-memory technology. So yeah, you have data reduction, and yeah, you don't have so many logs in the operational operation. Okay, so yeah, that's one thing that definitely changes, and it's not so much different for the users, because in the best case they won't even notice. Okay. But it's a big difference, at least for developers, for example. If you have custom code and so on, you will definitely need to look at this.
Yes, there it is. What is the way to S/4HANA? Yes, I remember in the past just talking about R3. For example, yes, there are simple migration projects, and everyone is talking about greenfield approach.
Yeah. So when you think about why should I do a greenfield approach, isn't it just an upgrade? Yeah, since we already talked about it's a different product, right? So it's definitely a valid approach to make a greenfield approach here. So basically you set up a new system, you maybe do the customizing from scratch, and then later on you will try to move some of the master data and maybe parts of the customizing to the new system, and then start with a clean system. And the other option would be the technical migration. And so what we've heard from our customers and partners for the different approaches is actually there are a few factors here. So for example, the greenfield approach was chosen when the customer also had kind of strategic goals to go back to SAP standard and to use new business processes. So this means that on the one hand, there will be also some custom code which won't be migrated to the new system. So you try to replace custom code with SAP standard, for example. Then you have maybe a lot of obsolete transactions because in the past you've only made technical upgrades and not functional upgrades. So you still use old solutions, for example, which will be discontinued in the future. On the other hand, if you're trying to go to SAP standard, even use new standard or new features like Fiori apps from scratch, and also maybe functionality which was previously in SCM or CRM or SRM. So the more these two these two processes before and after are different, the more you should look into the greenfield approach.
Regarding this, just wait, regarding these obsolete transactions, just how many transactions we are talking about approximately? Are we talking about 10, 20, or much
yeah,
more?
I think it could be several hundreds here, depending on which functionality you use. But yeah, there are quite a lot of obsolete transactions. But I think for most customers, there will be at least less than 100 which will be used by the customer.
Okay, so it's important to identify which one are used.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
fine.
of course. Then on the other hand, technical migration, why was it chosen? Obviously, because it's less effort, because you don't need to make a new implementation, you just do a migration, and it will be faster. But of course, in some cases, it won't be less effort if you're just using very little from what you've done before, and then you need a lot of new processes and so on. So yeah, but that's the points where the customers went for the migration.
Okay, now the path to S4. No, just we're here. What really changes now? You remember in our title, simplification list. What is that?
Yeah, so there are really a lot of changes in S4HANA, and SAP also offers a lot of information resources on these topics. So I've put them here on a slide. I don't know if they are really complete, but I think these are the major tools and sources for information which are offered by SAP. These one here are all free. I mean, you don't have to pay extra for it. Some of them you can, for example, simplification database. Currently, you can only use it if you already have a license for S4HANA, but still, it's a free tool, right? So there is a kind of order from the top to the bottom here. So you will, in the evaluation phase, for example, you will start with the business scenario recommendations, which is a good starting point where you can identify points where S4HANA adds value to your existing business processes, where there have been new features and so on. Then for the user interface, you can already have a look at the Fiori apps reference library, which is a complete list of all Fiori apps available. And it also offers that you can upload your workload data, and you will get some recommendations for the Fiori apps. But still, there are very less details. So you just it has 3 categories from like low, medium, and high potential. You don't really get any details, for example, how many users would be using this app or something. And these 2 options are relevant as well for greenfield as for migration, because I mean, obviously it makes sense to think about the value proposition in both cases.
Okay.
But then if you're doing a migration, you need to worry about the pre-checks, which are basically preconditions which need to be fulfilled in order to do the migration. You don't need to do this when you're doing a greenfield approach, because you will start with no data at all. And then we come to the simplification list, right? So the simplification list is kind of a summary. It also contains the stuff which is in the pre-checks. at least to some extent, and it also has the contents from Simplification database. So the Simplification list basically covers all the detailed changes. Okay. Yeah, and when you're doing a re-implementation, you might use the best practice content, for example, but I think that's not that important right now. And I think we also prepared a new poll for the simplification.
That's right, but I have a question before.
Okay.
So do I have to use all these resources if I just want to inform me about S4HANA, or if I'm just in an not a evaluation phase, so I have to check all these 6 topics?
Yeah, and also as mentioned in the questions, yes, the maintenance planner is also a tool which is supporting the transition phase. Yes, but I think it's not that much of an information source. It's more a implementation or migration tool. But yeah, of course, when you're doing the migration, you will also, for example, use the system update manager, the SUM tool, for example, and maintenance planner, and you will also need a solution manager system. That's like all upgrades.
Okay, great. Yes, so you're right. Just want to start. We prepared another poll. We are interested in you. What about your experiences with the simplification list? So maybe I've never heard of, I know it exists, or I've browsed it, or I know it by heart, or maybe it's useless for me. So please feel free to answer. It would be great for us to have this information, and especially to talk with you about your experiences.
Yeah, since we already have a question on this in the questions room here, how to obtain a simplification list. The simplification list is available on help.sap.com, just on the help page for S4HANA. I think it's on the very top of the resources there. But yeah, so I think
we can put in the link in the email I will send to you.
Yeah, there might also be a link in the slides.
Okay.
Yeah, right. Let's see.
Okay, so just what about the results? Oh, here it is. Have never heard of. Oh, 39%. I know it exists. 36. And yes, someone about 21%. I've browsed it, and oops, it's useless for me. 3%.
Okay, so about 1/4 doesn't really know it.
Yes.
So at least we are telling some news here. Yeah, so I prepared some examples what we can find in the simplification list. So, for example, there are changes in data structures. So this is a very technical information, but still it's important for me because it's a source where I can basically check the custom code against. And in this case here, it's the material number, the length has changed. So I would say it's a minor change because there is no a new table or there is no new field, but it's just an existing field which is changed a little bit. And then the simplification list also offers some information in which cases could this be a problem for you. So it's not only the information about what has changed, and in many cases also why did it change, but also it gives you some inspiration if this could be a problem for you. As mentioned before, if you're really interested in data structure changes, there is a thing called Simplification database, which will check all these changes against your custom code. You need a S4HANA license for this, but I've heard that there are plans to make it for free in the future. Then the simplification list contains information about interfaces that have changed. So there are, I think, a few interfaces, but still you need to check this if it has an impact for you, and if the interfaces can be used the same as with SAP ERP. And next category is probably a really easy one. It's the obsolete transactions. So there are a lot of obsolete transactions in S4HANA, which means you can't just execute those transactions anymore because they are gone. And In some cases, like in this example, there are already some replacement transactions existing, and a lot of them, I think in this case, it's since release 4.6a, so a pretty long time available. But also in our analysis, we always find some obsolete transactions being executed by the customers because probably lack of training.
But SAP is still delivering.
Yeah, so they are still there, so you could use them, but now you can't use them anymore. In this case, it's just a training problem because you need to tell the users to use the new transactions. In some cases, it's also that these transactions are gone and there is no direct replacement because, for example, you need to migrate from the classic cache management to the new one or something like that. But yeah, obsolete transactions are one part of simplification list. Then you need to look at business process related information, which means that the SAP standard is kind of changing. So yeah, in this case we have a business function which is, for example, always off. There's also the case that it's always on, and you need to check if this is a problem for you, because in some cases if you have a function activated which will be always off in HANA, maybe you need to deactivate it first. In other cases it just has no effect at all. And then the last one is here, for example, the sourcing logic. So SAP standard processes again are changing. So some of the sources of supply won't be used for the, I think, MRP run in the future. And there is also the explanation, how is the old logic, how's the new logic, and why did we change it? Yeah, probably it makes sense, but you need to use this information. And also if you're a consultant, for example, you need to know that there is a difference. You can't just do the sourcing like you've always done it, but you need to change it maybe.
On 278 pages.
Yes, so the 278 pages are from FPS 2. So we've seen this before. There are feature package stacks, and each of the feature package stacks has new simplifications. The simplification list is always release dependent. There is a small section on the top which describes the changes since the last simplification list. Usually it's just 1 or 2 pages more, for example. Yeah, and the contents, this is what we already looked at the examples, and as you can see, the structure on the right hand side, it's structured by application area. There are also references to SAP notes where you can get even further information. In some cases you can implement a node, and then you have a pre-check report which you can run directly in your system, and you can download it directly on help.sap.com. Okay, so yeah, you mentioned it. The problem is the simplification list is pretty long. It's hard stuff because it's a very technical point of view. But still, I think it's a really good source of information because it's not marketing. It's really fact-based information. And the only problem is it's hard to check it against your running customer system. And yeah, so we've developed usage analysis, Stefan, and yeah, we put a lot of KPIs in our analysis. And for example, for this decision, if you want to do greenfield or migration approach, we can check a lot of stuff. For example, the not used custom programs, because these are not relevant for the migration. We can check the obsolete transactions, for example, which one are actually used by the customer, to see how large is this area on the left-hand side that will be gone with S/4HANA. On the other hand, we try to make kind of predictions if you should use some of the new features, for example, Fiori apps, which one are relevant for the customer. We can also evaluate the best practice content, HANA Live views, and something which is also very special is we can also assign custom transactions to scenarios in Fiori apps. Okay, and this is a picture from our S/4HANA innovation analysis. You can see the whole contents on the left-hand side. So there is a performance part, and we have archiving, data aging, and we have best practice processes, and on the very bottom we also have the HANA apps, which means Fiori, S/4HANA Finance, Logistics, and so on. And here we have the obsolete transactions. So we took all the simplification items from the simplification list and extracted the obsolete transactions, and then we matched this information against the workload of the customer system, and then we can see how many users are affected by this simplification item and how many dialogue steps, which means is the use very intense, is it daily business or is it more exotic features? And yeah, with the number of users, you can see if this is something where you need to do some corporate training, or if you just need to go to individuals and tell them what actually changes. And yeah, the size of the bubble is how many transactions are obsolete in this item.
So the gray one is very important.
Yeah, the gray one, this is one which will be probably the largest one for every customer. This is the business partner approach. So you won't have these transactions like XD01, XK01, FD03, and so on. And they will be all replaced by a single transactions, which is the transaction BP for business partner. So there is only one business partner in S/4HANA. Yeah, and so with this, with such an analysis, you can easily identify the items and how the relevance is for your
just
customer.
And how many users are involved?
Yes. Yeah, and for also which users are involved the most and which ones are just using it from time to time. Yeah, then in our usage analysis, we also evaluate the best practice content, which might be interesting if you will do a re-implementation afterwards, for example, so not a migration, but greenfield approach. So you can see which of the best practice processes are relevant. So then you can use the configuration guides or also the customizing, which is delivered with this best practice. And yeah, as always, we have some KPIs which show how many users are active in this process step and how many dialogue steps do we have.
What about these best practices? It's delivered from SAP?
Yeah, it's delivered from SAP. There is also an online website where you can browse this best practice content. It's still in beta, and you really notice it because, for example, you can't view the process diagrams currently. The links are all broken, but I think this will be resolved soon, and yeah, you can access this data. Yeah, and you can also download the best practice content with all the documents contained. Yeah, then what's also important, the Fiori apps, as we've seen before, there are nearly 300 Fiori apps for S/4HANA. In our S/4HANA innovation analysis, we rank all the Fiori apps regarding to how many users could use this app, and also map it with the strategic goals which were selected by the customer before. And you can see details for each of the Fiori apps. And I think this is pretty important because there are all Fiori apps kind of installed in S/4HANA, at least the backend part, but still there is an effort for each Fiori app to implement, because you need to do authorizations, you need to activate OData services in the front end, you need to do some manual rework, then implement SAP nodes and so on. So it's really handy if you have the top Fiori apps, so you can concentrate on those during the project phase. For example, implement them for one business process, and then later on do a rollout for more business processes.
Okay. Yes, I've heard about one customer. They develop their own Fiori app. I think this is possible as well.
Yeah.
And they need about 4 to 5 days. So it seems to be a little bit complicated. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you're developing a Fiori app in 4 to 5 days, it seems pretty fast for me, but still, maybe they copied a little bit from the SAP standard. Yeah, of course. And yeah, so now we have the question, when should you do these analysis? So on the right-hand side, with the gray background, I have the migration steps from SAP. So it basically starts with check the requirements, use the maintenance planner, pre-checks, and custom code migration worklist, also known as simplification database. And then use the software update manager to do the migration. But since we've also seen in the first poll that many of you are still in evaluation phase, so these steps are not really relevant for you yet. So in the first place, you should really check, is S/4HANA a good solution for my company? So you need a value proposition. You can use the business scenario recommendations for that. You can also use our S/4HANA innovation analysis. So you need to check the new features, which are relevant, which obsolete transactions do we have, and then to complete the effort estimation, we would recommend to do the custom code migration worklist in this early phase, at least when it's available without S/4HANA license, because this is something you really need for the effort estimation. And then you can actually do the project planning. So, I mean, one possibility would be to say we don't migrate to S/4HANA at all. But I hope for most companies they will find some arguments because there are definitely great features, but you need to identify those and evaluate them. And then the project planning, you need to decide if you're doing greenfield or migration. If you're doing migration, you can use the SAP steps, of course. If you're doing a re-implementation, you need to get more information. For example, which business processes are you going to re-implement in the new system? Which custom code are you going to copy from the old system to the new one? Because I think most companies won't recreate their custom code from scratch. You will always try to reuse some of the custom code, and then you will have to talk about data migration and many other topics. But this won't be a migration project from this time. So you won't use the software upgrade manager. Instead, you will install a new system with a SVPM, for example. Yeah, and our usage analysis supports different phases. So the evaluation phase and planning phase is very well supported. We don't do code analysis, so that's why we recommend the custom code migration worklist. On the other hand, if you see that there are so many custom programs affected, there are also specialists like SmartShift and other companies which offer services in this area. And yeah, then if you're doing the migration, you can pretty much stick to the SAP roadmap. Otherwise, we can also help you with further analysis for the business processes in re-implementation. Okay, so I think
looks great, Fabian. Thanks a lot. And yes, feel free to type your questions to ask us. And we can start. Yes, there are a lot of questions. Fabian, how do I identify obsolete DDIC and repository objects?
Okay, so
and transactions. Sorry.
Yeah, for this case, you should really use the custom code migration worklist. So this is a tool which runs in a NetWeaver 7.5 system, and you can create an extract of your affected programs with a report which can be installed by a node, and then you can do this matching totally automatically. You just need a NetWeaver 7.5 system, and then you can do this. And currently, you need also the S/4HANA license, but as far as I've heard, it will be offered without license in the future.
Okay, then there's no question.
Yeah.
You can add the maintenance planner as an information resource. Thanks for this information for us.
Then, is there any difference in roadmap while implementing greenfield and migration? I think maybe this is what we've had in the last slide. I think in the first phase, when you're thinking about what does it actually give for benefits as for HANA, then this is no difference between migration and greenfield. Okay. But then when it comes to effort for custom code, for example, it starts getting different. So you need this information as a source for decision, and then you can decide. And then I think it's a totally different project based on if it's a greenfield or migration.
Yes, especially the effort.
Yeah, then how to obtain the simplification list, we already
still answered.
Put this.
Is Mara also column-based after migration?
Yes, I think so. There are some row tables, but these are I think Mara is a column table after this. But okay, then usage analysis or UPL, is it part of function?
Is part of Solvent functionality. What are your differences?
Yeah, so we also use the ST03N workload as well as UPL. UPL has no information about performance, so that's why we basically would stick to the standard workload. But for example, used custom code, it's much better to look at the UPL data.
And I think what I mentioned before, the user data, I think
that's also not
user related. Yes.
So then we have the question:
how would a custom code migration work list look like?
Yeah.
What would be the elements on it?
I can just check if I have this slide here in the slide deck. Probably not. But this is, I can give one slide for this. Let me just give me a second.
So just a second.
Yeah, you can go on with the next question if you want.
Can the existing ERP licenses be used for S4HANA? Oh, I think this is much more a question for SAP, think so?
Yeah, I think so too, but I think the short answer would be no. Okay. I have one slide here. Let me just show you this. Sorry for this, it's a German slide right now, but the screenshot below.
So it belongs to the question, how would a custom code migration work list look like?
So after you imported the extract from the productive system, you can see all the affected programs and along with the package, and you see which reference is actually affected. For example, in the first row we have the table ANLP, which is accessed by the custom program. And then in the custom code migration work list, so it's called work list because you can also track who is responsible for this and how is the status. So it's a tool which really supports you during the adoption of your custom code. The transaction is SYCM. So in every NetWeaver 7.5 system, you can use the simplification database.
Okay, can we get the updated simplification list and link? Okay, that's right. This is another information for us. Do you also use the simplification database which SAP provides?
Yeah, I mean the simplification database is currently it's used for custom code stuff, and we don't include it in our analysis. We only look at the used obsolete transactions because we are not focusing on code analysis. This is something which other partners can do, but also SAP has a great offer here with a simplification database.
Is there any list available for the nodes to implement for migration project?
Basically, all the nodes are also contained in the simplification list. But yeah, that's a lot of stuff.
Okay.
But I'm currently not aware that there is a complete list of all the pre-checks. Maybe SAP has something like this, but I didn't find it yet.
Okay. There another question. Is there a list? No. One of our customers is at ECC 6.0, enhancement package 6. Can I directly move to S4HANA in a single downtime using DMO?
Yeah, so the database migration object option, I think it's definitely possible to do a migration directly from EHP6 to S4HANA. As far as the downtime, I don't have any experience how long this downtime would be. I mean, single downtime isn't really the only thing to consider. I mean, maybe it's better to have like 2 smaller downtimes, but yeah, that's something we would need to. Oh, we have the answer from the SAP guy here. Yes, it's supported. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much.
Yes.
When is the Activate methodology for conversion and landscape transformation released?
Yeah, that's probably a question which is also for SAP to answer, because I don't know when SAP will release anything here.
Can you explain simplification list once again, maybe in 2-3 sentences? Is it possible, Fabian?
Yeah, the simplification list contains a lot of simplification items, and each simplification item is one part where S4HANA is actually different to SAP ERP. This might be different categories. We've seen data structure changes, business functions, interfaces, obsolete transactions, and so on. And yeah, it's basically the single source of truth for all the changes here.
Okay, so I think it was 4 sentences.
Oh, sorry.
What are all the factors which determine whether to go for migration or greenfield implementation?
Yeah, we've had this one slide here.
So first answer is it depends.
Yeah, it depends, and I think these are the questions you need to focus on here. Oh, let me just continue here.
Yeah.
So how many of your custom code will be used in the future? Are you trying to go from custom code to SAP standard? Are you going to use new features? Will there be a lot of obsolete transactions? I mean, the more you say yes to these questions, the more it is a reason to go for a greenfield. And also, but if you have done also functional updates in the past, you already have custom code lifecycle management in place and so on. These are reasons where you could go for the technical migration to S4HANA. And I think the default should always be the migration, but there are definitely cases where greenfield makes more sense.
I think so as well. Yes, one step. In enhancement package 6 to S4HANA, do we have autocorrection tools, and how do we estimate the custom code remediations?
Yeah, I think there are no autocorrection tools available. There is something which might help you, because if there is only, so most of the changes, there are compatibility views, so that custom code still works, but only if it's read access. If it's doing some update, delete, insert, it will be broken. But for example, reports or something, maybe you don't need to adjust them, even if the simplification list or simplification database tells you to do so, because these compatibility views will help you with that. But there is no autocorrection available from SAP. I think SmartShift might be offering something like this, but I'm not pretty sure about that.
Sure as well. So we see another question. In case of migration from ECC to S4HANA, what all checks we need to consider?
Yeah, I mean, basically you just need to go through the simplification list from the very top to the very bottom. That's the complete answer. On the other hand, yeah, most of the partners, I think for HPE, for example, they have a list of kind of important pre-checks, which will be done first. But yeah, you probably need to go through all of them during the project.
Okay, great. So a lot of questions. Is there one more question or one final question? I think we have now 4:45. Just waiting 2, 3, 4 seconds. Okay, so thank you very much for listening and attending our webinar. If there is any question after the session, don't hesitate to contact us. So or go directly, if coming from a partner, to your partner manager. And just to repeat the organizational, you will be informed next days where you find the recorded session, and especially where you can download the slides. Yes, this is one final question.
Yeah.
Will you be providing the slides? Thank you. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And also thanks for Frank Wagner for answering some of the questions.
Oh yes, thank you very much to SAP. Okay, so have a nice day. It's hot here. Enjoy it, and maybe we will go to the beer garden,
Yeah.
Fabian. Okay, have a nice day. Bye, welcome.